Today you join me in California, but very soon Baja, and the motorcycle in question is the Kawasaki Versys 1100. Over the next 2 days, I'm going to be spending quite a bit of time on this motorcycle. Now, right from the get-go, I'll be honest, this kind of sport touring bike is not one that's typically on my radar, and that puts me in the majority because the age demographic for this motorcycle and the motorcycles that it competes against is generally a little bit on the older side. This is very much a function over form kind of bike. But over the next few days, I'm going to get to know it very well, and we'll see if this is something that's maybe going to surprise me. Now, actually, a slight surprise to me is that throwing a leg over this bike, I can pretty easily flat-foot it. I'm only about 5'10", so I'm not super tall, but it's pretty easy to get my leg down. Seat height here is about 33.1 inches. It's not too bad. We can also see straight off the bat some of the many tech features that this bike has. Heated grips right here. We've got a few, looks like suspension and mode adjustments. We've got our cruise control, got a USB-C connection there. We've got another power connection here on the dash, and then we have an analog tachometer, some dummy lights, and then a pretty nice looking TFT, easy to read even in the daylight. However, it is a little on the small side. I wouldn't mind seeing a slightly bigger TFT at this price point, but all of that is part of the reason that this bike weighs 571 pounds in running order without the bags, another 20 pounds with the side cases, and if we look up top, we do have some wires going to the tops of the forks. This is electronically controlled suspension. You can also adjust the height of the windshield. You have to unscrew these slightly, and then you can slide it up and down. I'm going to start out with it up because we're going to begin with some highway riding. It's not my favorite mechanism for adjusting a windshield because it's not something you can easily do on the fly, but it still does give you that adjustability. Now, quite a few times in our little briefing for this ride, they talked about how easy this motorcycle is. Typically when I hear almost 600 pounds, I don't think easy motorcycle. However, our low speed maneuvering and everything so far has been pretty easy. This is a well-balanced motorcycle, surprisingly easy to reach the ground with. So it's proven itself to be not a bad little around town bike so far. Now, Kawasaki has made a few updates to this bike. One of the most significant is to the powertrain, and we'll wait until we warm it up a little bit, but they've increased the displacement on this engine from 1,043 cc's to 1,099. So it is a true 1100 now, and power has also increased from around 120 to 133, which is a decent power bump. The rest of the updates that they've made, not super significant. The quick shifter here, they've made some updates to it. The rest of the updates that they've made as far as the brakes and as far as some of the electronics and, you know, the Kawasaki app, I wouldn't necessarily say are quite as significant as the powertrain update, that increase in power, but they do continue to, as they say, refine the bike. And if you look at it as a total package, yeah, there's definitely a few notable differences. The power increase is going to be the main one that you're going to feel. The first thing that's standing out to me about this bike, though, is the suspension. I'm about 180 pounds, so sometimes I feel like I'm maybe a little bit on the lighter weight side for some of the bigger bikes out there as far as being comfortable on the suspension over bumps. But this Kawasaki electronically controlled suspension, so far it is pretty nice and smooth. We're not on any insanely rough roads yet, but it's a very plush motorcycle so far. So we are all checked in here at the border. We're good to go across. So we're stopped for a moment, and I can kind of show you my setup here. Both of these bags I have populated with some of my things, and they say that it's pretty easy to pull these off. So this will actually be the luggage that I'll bring into my room later. We'll test out how easy it is to pop them on and off, but pretty cool. Well, we are now officially riding into Mexico. So this is pretty cool. I've been to Mexico before, but not on a motorcycle. And it sounds like the area that we're going to be ending up at is a really beautiful bit of wine country. Right now, of course, we're just crossed into the border, so we got a ways to go until then. We've only been riding for a couple miles across the border, and this is everything that you would want it to be. We're right along the ocean, got beautiful hills and views and villas. This is just perfect, and this is exactly the kind of thing that Kawasaki wants to paint as the picture of what you would do with the Versys. That's of course why they chose this as the destination for our event. So I gotta say, I think they chose well. It is really pretty out here, and once again, revisiting the Versys, this is a really nice motorcycle to be on. So far, not a lot of complaints about how the bike rides. It rides really well. It is pretty comfortable. I don't mind the seat. I really like the wind protection. Some good technology that we've got here. Not tons of it that I'm having to use right now. Again, you know, it's not super cold, so I don't have to use the heated grips. And I don't typically use cruise control a ton when I'm riding, but it is there as an option. One thing that I do like, of course, is having different modes we can switch through. So if I come off a throttle and hold things down, I can go into sport mode that stiffens up the suspension, and it messes with a couple of your riding aids. I've been primarily riding around in road because it does give me that slightly more plush suspension. And then rain, of course, ramps up traction control and also gives you that lower output in that mode, so you're not going to have access to as much power. So for the type of riding that we've been doing here on the highway, very scenic, but for now really just trying to cover miles to get to our destination, where we should have some more twisty roads and more back roads rather than just highway. Road mode has been absolutely fine. Pulling out onto the highway here, let's let the 1099 breathe. I gotta say, it's rare that I actually have an opportunity to open it up on this bike, but when you do, it's got a good amount of pull and it makes a nice sound. I think it's got a really good induction noise. The exhaust is pretty quiet, so it makes it very livable day to day. Also, for a 4-cylinder, a nice push of torque the moment that you go for the throttle. It helps that it's a big displacement 4-cylinder. So all pretty good here on the powertrain side. Once again, absolutely love the quick shifter. Makes this a really fun, easy bike to ride. So big props to the powertrain on this motorcycle. I think it's one of the highlight features of it. I know that this is a relatively heavy motorcycle and it's not the most power to weight of any bike that's out there, but I wouldn't say it's got any problem getting out of its own way. So we've just finished today's ride and we've ended up at our overnight stay location. It's a really cool hotel here. We have also seen on our trip today some very pretty doggos. There's a lot of pretty dogs down here, but this video, of course, is about the bike. We've got dual 310mm disc brakes up front, so pretty beefy braking. Nothing that's branded Brembo or anything like that, but up top, 43mm forks, and these are Showa forks with their what they call Skyhook technology. I think that's been one of the reasons that the suspension today has been such an all-star component of this bike. One of really the focal points when you're riding is how smooth and good the suspension is. Another point to focus on here is the 1099cc inline 4. Like I said, really smooth, good power. 133 horsepower, which is not bad, and 82 pound-feet of torque, another good number, especially on torque for an inline 4. We've got our bags around the side here. Not a bad amount of space. One thing that I do want to mention though is that I do kind of wish we had a proximity key here and a keyless system for getting into the bags. I would like that because that's something that I enjoy on some other motorcycles out there in the market. I know that there's people that not only don't mind having a key to open up your bags, but maybe even prefer it. But I would say, to me, it feels just like a slightly more clunky process. So I would like it if this was all proximity and things that would unlock at the press of a button. But either way, not a huge deal. And then as far as the bike's styling, well, it's a hell of a thing to talk about while the bags are open, because that doesn't help its case. But focusing here on the front end, I really do believe that this is a motorcycle where form follows function. So to me, not the most beautiful motorcycle in the world. That is subjective. Not to get too weird and out there for you, but I think if this motorcycle were to come to life, it could bite my finger. It's definitely slightly buggy looking, if that's not too much of a stretch to make mentally, but it's got very much a Kawasaki kind of face to it. So I think it fits in with the rest of the Kawi lineup. And then we've got 17-inch wheels, these Bridgestone tires, battle axe, pretty solid. 180 mil in the rear, 120 width here in the front, also a 17. For fuel capacity, we have a 5.5 gallon tank, so range has not really been an issue today out on the road. And the sun is just starting to go down, so I haven't really gotten to see how effective here the cornering lights are, but still a nice thing to have. There's also some nice adjustability here in the levers, not only on the brake side, but here on the clutch side as well. So depending on how big your hands are, it's something that you can go in and fine tune a little bit. I am, though, a little surprised by this USB-C connector, how big this module is and how big the wire coming off the back is. That, to me, looks a little strange. So it is pretty cool digs that we've got here. This is kind of the room setup. Not really what this video is about so much, but here we have the bags. They are off the bike. I gotta say, it's definitely a little bit of a process tugging them off, so I'm not too worried about them coming off accidentally, but here we got them in the room, and I can use it as basically a suitcase. For day 2, we did have some more windy roads that we were able to ride, and for being a heavier motorcycle, the Versys 1100 handles that weight really well. You really don't notice it being very heavy so much when you're in the corners, even though I'm not the fastest cornering guy on the planet. Now, aside from riding across the border, which was pretty easy, we did mostly some highway riding to get back to Kawasaki's headquarters as quick as possible so that we could get to the building and get off the bikes before the rain started. Also want to say a quick thanks to Scott and the team over at Rider Justice. We've been working with them roundabout since the channel started, and we continue to work with them because they're great people to work with. So if you ever need legal representation, either on 2 wheels or 4, make sure you call Scott first. And just like that, we are back at Kawasaki's headquarters with all the bikes, and we managed to, for the most part, beat the rain. We just got a little bit of a sprinkle out of the sky here. Now, wrapping up time with the Versys, I would say it's a motorcycle that definitely puts function over form. So if the look of the bike is not super important to you, or if you like the look of the bike, then that's a non-issue. It's not my favorite looking machine in the world. It is really nice to ride, very comfortable suspension. I like the engine. I do wish that it had a few of those extra features, like maybe a bigger TFT and a proximity key, but aside from that, really a good motorcycle to spend a couple days on. So that's all for this video. Let me know what you all think in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next.